Trump wasted no time getting on the phone to tell Bibi Netanyahu basically to cut it out, stop.
Good day, good morning, good evening, everyone. I'm Elena. I'm joined by my colleague Moby, independent journalist from the United States, and our favorite guest, Larry Johnson, world famous already. And Larry, we have seen you even in this Lego cartoon that Iran has made recently. Actually, we wanted to start our discussion with you with your latest article that you have on your Substack. It's about Iran is having nuke. Could you please elaborate on that? Because as far as I understand that Iran has shifted from its idea of not having a nuke. This is the first part, and the second part that I have understood that now a new alliance is forming in the Middle East.
Yeah, I can. People may be skeptical of that, and all I can say is I'm just reporting what Pepe Escobar and I were told by a source. I'll call it. It's a second-hand source, but we know who our source is speaking to, and so it's somebody who is in a very senior position in Pakistan, and so it's somebody who's in a position to know what he is saying. We received this last Thursday. And basically, it said that Pezeshkian had talked to the Prime Minister of Pakistan, who was actually quite angry at the continued attacks of the United States, and basically said, if there's supposed to be a ceasefire, but the United States is not abiding by the ceasefire, so Iran was going to act accordingly. And Pezeshkian told the Sharif, the prime minister, he said, we're going to withdraw from the negotiations. We're going to pull out. We're going to put a halt to it. Then we will subsequently announce our withdrawal from the Non-Proliferation Treaty. And all of this is conditioned. If the United States stops the attacks and returns to abiding by the terms of the ceasefire, then okay, we won't be doing this. But if they don't, here's our plan of action. We withdraw from the negotiations. We withdraw from the NBT, and we're going to detonate a nuclear device in Iran. It's a demonstration that we have it, and that if they continue to attack us, we're prepared to defend ourselves. Now, there have been rumors in the past that countries like Pakistan and North Korea are capable of giving a nuclear device to Iran. But what we got Pepe and I got clarification yesterday that Iran has constructed a device now with the assistance of a third country. And I'm just not going to mention who the third country is, but let's just say between North Korea, Pakistan, China, and Russia, all of them have the ability and have nuclear devices. So this is, we got this last Thursday. Well, yesterday, Iran announces, okay, we're done. We're out of the negotiations. So we took that as, there was no way the guy last Thursday knew that this was, or let me put it this way. And he obviously knew from the information he had that this would happen. And he called it, and it happened. So we'll see now what happens with the other two elements. This was communicated to Marco Rubio on Thursday, last week. And so Rubio, I'm sure, shared that with Donald Trump, which, I think the Americans may have discounted it initially, but when they announced it, when the Iranians hit him with it yesterday, Trump wasted no time getting on the phone to tell Bibi Netanyahu basically to cut it out, stop, at least according to Axios. Now, according to Trump, he said he had a pleasant conversation with Netanyahu, and then Netanyahu's account was, well, Trump's not going to tell us anything. He's not our boss. We're going to do what we want to do. So who knows? But that's the state of play at this point.
Sounds like it sounds like we're reaching a point to where we're finding out if there's a difference between the true believer Zionist and the ones who are just simply paid to be a Zionist because it's convenient. So things are reaching high stakes, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
I had a question for you, Larry. A lot has been revolving around Pakistan.
Mm-hmm.
And my understanding is that the CIA was accused of overthrowing the Imran Khan, who was a very popular political figure there. And so I imagined Islamabad is a real battleground between the CIA and the MSS, the Chinese version of the CIA. Who do you think is winning that influence war? And has the embarrassing U.S. performance in the Iran war kind of changed the calculus?
Yes, I think Chinese are prevailing over CIA. It's true that there's been a complicated relationship between the United States and Pakistan. Going back to the mid 1950s, late 50s, early 60s, when the United States had a U-2 base. The plane, not the group, but the U-2 was based in one of the sites was in Pakistan to do overflights of the southern Soviet Union, and so you had that relationship. You had tight relationship during the war, the Russian or Soviet occupation of Afghanistan in the 1980s. So Pakistan was used as a staging base, a logistics base, a launching pad for the support to the radical Islamists who later were involved with attacks on the United States at 9/11. And then during the 20-year war with Afghanistan after 9/11, Pakistan provided a critical supply route for U.S. Personnel in Afghanistan. So you had that relationship, but I think that relationship has soured because Pakistan also has had a close relationship with Saudi Arabia to the extent that they've even signed now a mutual defense pact, and they've had a good relationship with Iran of all people, and the part of that is they share a mutual interest in fending off the independence movements in Baluchistan, and so the Baluchi tribe is both partially in Iranian territory and partially in Pakistani territory, but there's still it's not a poisoned relationship with the United States, and I think that's one of the reasons that China has used Pakistan as sort of the mediator in their overall goal, China's goal, working with the United States, working with Russia, is to construct this new security architecture, basically expelling the United States from the Middle East and consolidating control with Russia and China as the powers behind the throne, but putting Turkey, Saudi Arabia, Iran, Pakistan as sort of the leading powers in the region.
That's very interesting, and actually it shows that in general international relationships are much more complicated than people usually think, because
Right.
There is like Pakistan good, China good, then somebody else bad, and now here we can see this interconnection that is really very interesting, and yeah, it's very valuable, I think. And Larry, I also wanted to ask you. Recently, I have seen a video by one Jewish rabbi who was preaching that Israel, oh no, he wasn't a rabbi, he was an analyst, as he claimed he is. And he said that Israel must be prepared to invade even Turkey, and
Yeah.
Egypt. So, is it somehow feasible for Israel? Because yes, we all remember Six-Day War, which took place in the past, but Israel is not at the same level of capabilities as it was back then. So,
Yeah, no,
what,
I mean,
what
that
was
is,
that?
that was just crazy talk, delusional talk by this rabbi. Israel doesn't have enough manpower to pull off anything like that. Um, you'd think, to invade Turkey, never. How are they going to get there? And trying to assemble a force, they would have to activate the entire Israeli army, and which should be like 400,000. Well, that's the size of Turkey's army, and that's not even digging into Turkish reserves. So um, this is this is part of the craziness of these Zionists, the fact that they would even talk about that as something feasible, which is clearly it is not feasible.
And how do you see the possible Netanyahu stay in power? Because recently there were anti-governmental protests in Israel. Do you think that situation is starting to shift from what
Yeah,
it was?
yeah. I don't think in 6 months Bibi will be around, whether it's out because of health or that they've finally booted him from office. But that's not going to change the policy of Israel towards Iran and towards the Palestinians. So Bibi right now he's become a liability in some aspects, but that doesn't change the fact that the majority of the Israelis are still committed to the same policies that Bibi is executing, including they're invading Lebanon, attacking Beirut. That's still on the agenda if they can, and occupying 70%, 80%. They want to completely occupy Gaza and expel all the Palestinians. So that's not a Bibi policy. That's much broader. It goes beyond Bibi. That's the Zionist policy, and it's embraced by, I'd say, well over 55% of the Israelis, if not more.
And I remember how my friend said that Israel is number one country that he never wants to visit again because what he encountered there, he said it was something absolutely extraordinary. No other country treats people who come there the same way that Israel does. So.
Yeah. I mean, you met with sort of open hostility.
And let's move to more friendly countries. I wanted to ask your maybe expectations from Russia Economic Forum that is going to start soon. What are you expecting to hear, and what are your general expectations?
Well, I mean, one thing that people are looking at, the possibility is Ukraine going to attack St. Petersburg while this forum's underway. I wish I was attending. It's a great event. Massive. It's just a massive convention center that's located out the outskirts of St. Petersburg, out past the airport, and the number of countries. I was there 2 years ago, 2024, and the scale of it, it's tough to get your mind around. There's so much activity, so many different presentations and seminars being run. And so they start tomorrow, 3rd, 4th, it goes through Friday, and it's closed out with a big speech by Vladimir Putin. 2 years ago when he gave that speech, he was hosted on stage by Sergei Karaganov, Sergei is, I've become friends and acquainted with Sergei since then. So there was very little U.S. and Western and European attendance then. And I suspect that may be the case again this year. But this really is sort of, let's call it one of the premier events for the global South and BRICS. This shows what the future of BRICS is. A lot of economic activity that's shifting outside the control of the United States.
I can't really see what the benefit to Ukraine would be if they attack the conference directly. Maybe they would attack St. Petersburg during the conference to try to embarrass Russia as a provocation. But do you think they would attack the conference directly? There's so many countries represented. It would just be.
Well, I agree. It'd be stupid, but
I don't know why.
They'd see the embarrassment factor to say, see, Vladimir Putin can't protect you, and Russia is weak. But, the Russians have followed up on the threats that they made. They warned folks to get out of Kyiv last week, or at least foreign diplomats, and they conducted another massive strike on Kyiv and other cities across Ukraine. So, we're seeing an increased tempo of Russian military activities in Ukraine. I think the Ukrainians, they're getting desperate, and Moby, you're right. It would be counterproductive. I mean, it's likely if they did such a thing. However, desperate people don't always think rationally. So you're thinking rationally, and I'm not sure at this point that logic and rationality are widely available in Ukraine.
Well, yes, they seem to be in some delusional state, like that attack on Starobelsk college.
Right.
It was, this is something that can be compared to strike on the girls' school in Iran. Of course, amount of victims was less, but it was a deliberate attack. And I think yesterday Bastrikin reported to Vladimir Putin that there was a Starlink antenna found on one of the on one of the drones. So it wasn't just something that something went wrong. It was deliberate attack on children, and
Now it can be, and this is not to. I'm not making an excuse for it. I'm just pointing out that one of the elements that has been incorporated in Ukraine's drone attacks is the artificial intelligence targeting packages. And we saw, in other words, if the AI package identifies something as a military target, and then the people acting on that data don't question it, don't challenge it, don't double check it, it makes it very easy to go out and do something like this. And it appears that was an element in the attack in Iran on Midlab, on the school that killed. It was primarily a girls' school. Again, I'm not saying that it's not to excuse the West, but this over reliance now on AI is creating some real problems, because it may take old information and assume that it's up to date, and if the people who are putting in those coordinates, if they don't ask, they don't challenge, these kinds of things can happen. And have happened. I ran into this just the other night. I want to see what the latest was with the Russian economy, and so I was using it's called Claude AI. It's part of Anthropic, and Anthropic has been involved with the U.S. military. And so I said, well, okay, what's the latest on the Russian economy? And it came back with this very negative, this is, it's the oil. It's barely making any money. The oil sector's damaged, et cetera. And so when I got through with the answer, I went back. I wrote back just like I'm talking to you. I said, wait a second. Why are you ignoring the fact that there's been a significant rise in the price of oil, and that Russia selling the same amount has made 4 times the amount of money? And it comes back and goes, oh, you're right. My bad. I was just looking at data from January and February. I didn't. It's making this confession to me like it's a criminal. And I was like, God, you get some real insight into it. That's how screwed up this system is. It can be good at collecting some information that's out there, but it's always a function of the source. And if you've got a poison source, or a source that's absolutely wrong, and that's drawing the information from that and repackaging it, you're going to wind up, killing a bunch of kids at a college, or killing a bunch of girls young girls at a school in Iran. So that's another factor in this. I'm not saying, I don't think there was someone deliberately sat down and said, hey, how can we really piss off the Russians? I know, here's this college dormitory, and it's got all these, late teen or early 20, primarily young women. Let's kill them. That'll really advance our military cause. I don't think that happened, but this shows another area that this war that's underway can be affected by some technological elements that are outside of the control of human beings.
Well, speaking of Ukraine, I was talking to people who go regularly, who visit Lysychansk and Starobelsk as well. So the person who has been there, and he was speaking about really terrible crimes that were committing against civilian population on those territories starting from year 2014. So I hope that people under age of 16 are not listening to us right now. But there was a case when a girl there, it was 2015, she was raped by several people. Then she was, when still alive, she was put in the net, like the fencing net. They added rocks there and drowned her in the pond when she was still alive. And when that person told me that, he said, most terrible thing that the one inhabitants of the city that were talking to him, they were speaking in such a mundane voice, so they literally got used to such an attitude from Ukrainian armed forces. So nothing would surprise me if it was a deliberate attack.
Yeah.
And there is a whole channel run by Maxim Grigoriev, and he regularly represents this data. He was even in UN, I think, a couple of times, and they regularly hold meetings on the crimes that were committed by Ukrainian side since 2014. It's called the Black Book, and it's on Russian MFA website. And there are things, I was reading some extracts from Banderites, from what Banderites were doing to locals during Great Patriotic War, and what AFU did to civilians. And the most terrible thing is that these civilians were counted as if they are also Ukrainian citizens. But what they did to their own people, it's something unimaginable.
Yeah.
Really.
Yeah. And I'm not suggesting that Ukraine's not guilty or responsible for those kinds of acts, but it's just, add into that technology as another dynamic factor. And, it's a recipe where sometimes seemingly irrational, illogical things can happen. So, and that was one of the concerns with respect to the St. Petersburg International Economic Forum, because you're going to have quite a gathering. In fact, I know that Candace Owens is attending, the U.S. podcaster. So she, and it's interesting watching some of her posts from Moscow. That's like, oh my God, what what an incredible city. I said, yeah, duh.
Larry, one thing we've seen with this whole the AI targeting used in war and targeting civilians, we saw the Israeli lavender system used in Gaza. We're seeing way more AI used with the U.S. military. Do you think that part of the reason is not about efficiency of targeting? Because in the Iran war, we saw the United States using long range JASMs to blow up glorified blow up toy houses.
Mm-hmm.
And by that I mean the Chinese decoys, which had a heat signature. They were big, blown up, inflatable air defense systems. We saw that. So they're not getting a huge payoff on it. But the other thing I think is this justify is we didn't do it, an AI did?
No, I'm not sure that's what's going on. And again, I got this from a recently retired intelligence officer, military intelligence officer, that a year and a half ago, this AI applications were not really being used. They weren't present. Now they are. So they've come into implementation within the last 12 to 14 months. And I've seen this in the past. I was around, for example, when they started using. It became easier to do secure televised conferences, where a morning meeting between different commanders from around the world, and so it was like the those movies where man discovers fire. They sit around and go, oh, 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 So there's that element. The same with drone technology. With when drones were first introduced, and they were able to see real time on the battlefield, and they would called it kill TV. You could actually see them kill. You could watch somebody getting killed. So there's that initial phenomena where they don't have experience with it, but boy, they're attracted by the technology, and they let that sort of take over. So I think there is a bit of that element. Or like, the 3-year-old kid with the hammer. Everything looks like a nail, so you got to hit everything, and that's now with AI. Oh, we're gonna apply it just without thinking it through, even asking a question like, "Does this make sense?" So there's that element involved, and it's I think they're starting. There's that learning process where you discover, oh, this maybe this is not as perfect as I thought it was, and it's bitten them in the ass on the whole MinLab thing. I know there are some out there still convinced that the United States knew exactly what it was hitting, and was happy to kill those girls. I personally don't believe that. I mean, yeah, there are some sick bastards in the military, but by and large, most people I worked with over almost 30 years didn't have that kind of monstrous mentality, and I always have seen more instances of stupidity and ignorance as opposed to malevolence guiding things. So I never underestimate the power of stupidity.
Yeah, that is actually true, and that's why I don't like drawing parallels or combining all the people in like in as a whole, because different countries have different approaches and different motivations also in the conflict. So yeah, but that AI is something that we really need to learn to live with, because Actually, what troubles me it's economic aspect of application, because people are losing their jobs. And I literally, like my brother, his friend is working in IT. He is a manager for the department, and the department was told, now you guys are training the AI, and then we will reduce staff to, like, we will fire 70% of staff because we don't need you. So your objective is to train, and then you're out. They were told directly.
Where does your brother live?
In the Baltic states.
Oh, in the Baltic states. Okay. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. I mean, if that as that happens, you're gonna. I think one thing that we'll see is also um, those responsible for trying to train the AI applications or to get them up to speed. They'll be involved with sabotaging them too. So this is, yeah, we're in a very uh, interesting and frightening technological time, and there are a lot of pressures that are not fully being taken into account. For example, the entire premise of AI rests upon these data centers, and all the data centers are these computer networks, massive computer networks that are able to access electronically all of the information that is now available in an electronic form. But they're focusing primarily on English. I have not seen any of these AI engines that will, for example, go out and collect all the information that's in Spanish or that's in Russian or that's in Chinese. Now, maybe DeepSeek does that on the Chinese side, and I can talk about that a little bit. Some of what I've seen real limitations with DeepSeek, but they suck all this information in. So you got these computers. Well, and what's the biggest problem for the data centers? Electricity. You got to have enough electrical power. Well, Europe's screwed on that front. They've been shutting down nuclear reactors, and they're basically back to coal-fired plants almost. The United States is lagging way behind on the power front. And then the other thing, though, to power those, you've got the electricity for those computers. Those computers need computer chips. So the start of this war on February 28th in the Persian Gulf and the attack on Iran led to the shutdown of Qatar's basically helium industry. And Qatar, it turns out, is providing 44% of the world's supply of helium. Yeah, I had no. That's been one of the things I've learned as a result of this war. Well, without helium, the NVIDIA and other companies in Taiwan that are making computer chips can't make computer chips because they don't have enough helium. So they're having to cut back. So at the very time that the demand for these computers is surging, the demand for the chips is surging because they got to have them. We got all these people that they're trying to build out the infrastructure, that the price is going through the roof. And so it's instead of this growth that's planned is going to be stalled and maybe even reversed in some cases, or that it gives China a definite edge that the other countries that were dependent upon supplies out of Qatar are not. So yeah, this is, again, these are like secondary, unexpected effects that nobody planned for when they just said, "Hey, let's decapitate the Iranian leadership, and the people will rise up and overthrow them, and we'll have a new regime." Nobody sat down and calculated these other possible consequences.
Yeah, in the United States here, we're looking at the Strategic Petroleum Reserve basically hitting functional bottom by July, August time period, and we don't export. Well, we export some oil, but we also need to receive heavy oil to make
Right.
diesel because all our oil is too light because it's all shale oil. So we're in a real weird situation. Plus, I don't know how you build all these data centers or expect to build increase military production when inflation is going to just wreck everything. I mean, the cost of they fired long range JASMs, they fired Patriots, they fired THAADs during this recent round with Iran, but the cost to replace those is going to be a lot more because the material cost, data centers, you need a lot of diesel to build that. It seems we're in a running faster to go nowhere sort of thing.
But no, it's so on the diesel question, the primary import, or the United States is a net importer of diesel, or of the heavy crude that Moby referred to, and that our refineries that are down around the Gulf Coast, they are set up specifically to deal with heavy crude. Now, there's a way you could look at it and say, was the invasion of Venezuela, or the kidnapping of Maduro, the takeover of Venezuela, and basically capturing Venezuelan oil for the exclusive use of the United States, was that part of a broader plan to take on Iran? What did they in fact anticipate that? Yeah, we're going to invade Iran. The Gulf's going to get shut down, and 20% of the world's supply of heavy crude is going to be off the market. Maybe. So right now, the United States is dependent on importing diesel from Canada, Mexico, Venezuela, are the principal countries. And as Moby correctly noted, all the light crude we produce, that you can make gasoline with that. And a lot of that is exported to Europe and to Asia. But this is why right now, I don't know what you're seeing in Oklahoma, but here in Florida, there's about a $2 gap between the price of gasoline or petrol and price of diesel. And, as you correctly noted, that spillover effect that cascades through the system, that people that drive trucks, that pick up foodstuffs, that anything that's sold in a major store, whether we're talking groceries or household items, those are all hauled by diesel. And so when that price of that's going up, of course, it's going to create this massive inflationary spike that is, I don't think fully there's not a comprehension throughout the public in the United States about how bad that's going to be, because it's going to be quite significant. And people who are on fixed incomes and people who are in, let's say, below the poverty line, they're really going to get blasted. They're really going to get hurt. So this is one of these. I think it could have been predicted, but before they started the war, to say, okay, this is one of the risks, but it wasn't taken into account. They just ignored it. Oh, it'll work out. It's not working out too well.
Well, yes, and for the oil industry, I also think the times are quite harsh, because on the one hand, you need to enlarge production of oil, extraction of oil. On the other hand, it costs money, so they need investment. But how can you invest if the world is plunging into crisis? Because the statistical data was released, I think, for France. France's economy is also declining. Canada's economy is declining. Sweden is in decline. And now experts are awaiting results from Germany. And according to what Merz was saying, Germany isn't also performing nicely. And I think in the US also situation is not that bright. So,
well, look, I can't emphasize enough, and people may get sick and tired of hearing me say this, But we're living through something right now that no generation of human beings have ever lived through in modern times, in which you've had 5 critical commodities. I'll call them, you've got oil, 20% of that gone the way it used to be. So we were accustomed to living here. We got this now down here. The liquid natural gas, 25% gone. Urea and sulfur, that levels about 35% of the world's supply. Critical and agricultural applications. It's the largest one, but the sulfur is used also to make sulfuric acid for other industrial processes and cleaning up metals. 35% of that gone. And then the helium, which we talked about a little bit earlier, 44% gone. So how does the world economy adjust when these significant portions of these elements are removed from the system? I don't see how the only thing that can logically follow from that, in my view, is a recession and an inflation at the same time, which is called stagflation. We're running the real risk that we could depress economic production to such a level that it would be a depression, where you've got declines in output greater than 10%. And as you, Lena, as you're talking about it, this is not an isolated phenomena. Japan's in a financial crisis right now, and their debt is like 250% relative to GDP. The U.S. debt, the actual amount is hurtling towards 40 trillion. When Donald Trump took office 16 months ago, it was 37 trillion. He's added, in the space of 16 months, almost $3 trillion. So these are unsustainable. And then against this backdrop, the other element what we're witnessing with this war with Iran is the introduction of a new economic system. That when Iran says, okay, you're going to pay fines to get out of the Gulf, or you're going to pay a let's call it like a resort fee, and you're going to pay in yuan, not dollars. You see Japan's dumping its treasuries. China is dumping treasuries. Saudi Arabia is dumping treasury bills. Russia, so instead of the U.S., Scott Bessent, the U.S. Secretary of Treasury, sitting there watching countries line up trying to buy U.S. debt, which, they buy our treasury bills. That allows us then to go on our wild spending spree. It's just the opposite's happening. And both Russia and China over the last 2 years have made a concerted effort to buy gold and silver and not U.S. Treasury bills. So they're clearly gearing up for an alternative financial system where the United States can no longer threaten countries with poverty and bankruptcy if they don't do what the United States tells them to do.
Yeah. Actually, today I read in the news that savings in gold have outnumbered the amount of money invested in U.S. treasuries.
Mm-hmm.
So looks like we're going back to golden standard. But here's the question I was thinking about. I think when the crisis of 2009 has ended, if it has ever ended, I was thinking, first of all, how did it end? And secondly, my idea since then was maybe we will find ourselves in neo-feudalism quite soon, because we have two outcomes of the current crisis. Either we go the way when governments say, well, okay, guys, we nullify your debts or somehow restructurize debts of the populations that they must have done in 2007 when Lehman Brothers crisis emerged. but they didn't do it. They chose to save the banks instead, or they will go. They will deepen the crisis again by saving the banks, saving the large entities, and then we are in the modern slavery once again.
Yeah, I think um, the the looming financial crisis that I believe will hit the West, and it'll be sort of an extension of this attack. It'll be a partial consequence of the attack on Iran and the disruption of the global economy that was brought on by shutting down the Strait of Hormuz. Um, I'm not an. I did do a PhD, comprehensive field in international economics, so I could understand supply and demand, but was not a finance guy. But Alex White, who does he has a YouTube channel called Reporterfy Media, and he's a derivatives trader, lives in China, and he's been doing it for 25, 30 years. And he's let's see, what's the technical term? Scared shitless. Yeah, that's the technical term. Because he said what's going on in this derivatives market, it is $800 trillion to $1 quadrillion in size. Massive. It's a giant financial casino. You've got people making bets, like right now. Some are betting that the price of oil is going to go up, and some are betting that the price of oil is going to go down. Now, objectively, just from a factual standpoint of how supply and demand works, the current futures price on oil, like Brent or West Texas Intermediate, it makes no sense. I mean, it's being manipulated, and it's being manipulated by these massive pools of money. Because if you compare during COVID, the future price for a barrel of oil spiked up to like $150 a barrel. But you didn't have a disruption of supply. I mean, the supply was still there. Ships were still being loaded. They weren't getting sunk or attacked in the Strait of Hormuz. But nonetheless, that market was allowed to go up 150. Now they're suppressing the future price, the paper price. However, if you're in Singapore or Manila in the Philippines or in Japan, and that tanker comes into your port, and you're going to start, hey, I'm going to buy all the oil that's on your ship. You're going to pay $140, $150 right now. So that's why I say this. You've got this false world. It's real, but it's all based upon lies and misinformation. And it will not last forever. It comes crashing down, as we saw with the 2008 financial crisis. Again, that was sparked by derivatives, but they were confined to the housing market. What we're talking now on this derivative front is something much broader that covers the global economy. And you've got the warning signs out there. The massive expansion into the whole AI arena, and yet without having, it's like you're building this huge building, but nobody took time to look at, did they pour the foundation properly? Does it have support columns? Are they in the right place? Because then you get this thing built and it collapses on itself because you didn't build the proper foundation. And then you're looking at, well, okay, we've just disrupted 25% of the world's supply or 35% of the world's supply of fertilizer. So farmers can't plant as many crops. But we got more people. We're going to have more people on Earth, assuming that there's not some massive war that kills millions 12 months from now. And so that means the demand for food is going to go up, not down. And yet we've got processes in place where the food is going to be less, and the genuine possibility of famine in some parts of the world. So, I mean, there's some really dark, dire, ugly things on the horizon that flow from the United States and Israel thinking, hey, I've got this great idea. Let's attack Iran. Let's kill all of their senior leaders. And then the people will throw out those nasty Muslim clerics, and then we'll have a bunch of hedonists, Western deviants in charge of Iran. That'll make the world better.
Larry, maybe you have seen the video that that exile prince, so to speak, of Iran was visiting Odessa, and he was, yeah, there was even a video of him taken. So what was he doing in Odessa is very hard to tell, but I think to the general public, if people didn't see it, I think it must also explain something of who this Iranian wannabe leader, who doesn't even live in Iran, what he represents.
Reza Pahlavi.
I remembered his name. I didn't remember his last name, but that was, oh yeah, what else to expect from him?
Yeah, no, I saw he's catting about, and then you always have to come back to the question: who's paying him? Where's the money coming from?
And it is really interesting that U.S. as if is interested in regulating conflict in the Ukraine. Well, now they seem to be, according to the data that you have published, that they also at least start to think that, oh, maybe we shouldn't make it worse in Iran. So I guess the American administration, at least, they have been given information to think about, and let's hope that they will draw correct conclusions.
Well, there's such a massive information control, and it's global. Basically, it's how do we tell the story? How do we define what is reality? And let's the simplest illustration, one of the most glaring that has actually helped create some of the issues we're dealing with today are the lies we were told about Saddam Hussein. Saddam Hussein became this mythical evil figure who was on par with Adolf Hitler, so we were told. And I myself, I was there. I was in the counterterrorism shop at State when when Saddam invaded Kuwait, and I went with the information that was, again, information that's coming across in intelligence reports and what's being said on the news, but nobody then stood up to say or was allowed to become, get their story out saying, wait a second. We've just spent the previous 9 years, from 1980 through 1988, supplying Saddam Hussein with the chemicals that he used to make chemical weapons. We supplied him with biological agents for making a bio weapon. We supplied him with money, and we supplied him with intelligence. I mean, the human intelligence and technical intelligence. We provided all of this to him so that he could help kill Iranians on our behalf. And he did that. And so throughout that 8 years, we got the pictures of him with Donald Rumsfeld, who was an official in the Department of Defense at the time. So, the reality was the United States had a relationship with this guy. He wasn't just somebody that we had a casual acquaintance. And so he had regular meetings with U.S. ambassadors and with CIA station chiefs. And my friend, now deceased, Pat Lang, Pat was the one that for 87 and 88 that hand carried intelligence to him. So he goes to April Glaspie, the U.S. ambassador, in 1989 and says, hey, these Kuwaitis are stealing oil from us. we're gonna go make them stop that. Do you have a problem with it? And Glaspie, no, we have no view on that. Okay. Then all of a sudden he does that, and we go crazy in the West. Go crazy. Oh my God, this Saddam, he's evil. And then over the next 10 years, we build up the mythology. Well, he's got those weapons of mass destruction. Well, no shit. Where did he get them? He got them from us. But that story's not told. We're told the story of Saddam bad, therefore we must destroy. And the latest one, and I'll close with this, was we saw this Israeli ambassador at the UN Security Council yesterday, Danny Danon. And he's talking about the Hezbollah attacks and the terrorism on Israeli citizens. Okay, let's ask a question. Nobody would ask him directly this question. How many Israeli civilians have been killed by Hezbollah attacks just in the last 2 months? I think the answer is, I'm sure the answer is 20. Then turn the question around. How many civilians have you murdering bastards killed in Lebanon and in Gaza and in the West Bank in the last 2 weeks? And we're talking thousands, not hundreds, thousands. And yet we're told that poor little Israel's the victim. That's what I mean. This manipulation of the narrative. As you can tell, it makes me a little cranky.
Understandably so.
Yeah. Well, okay, Larry, thanks a lot for today's conversation.
Well,
insightful as usual.
Yeah, I always enjoy chatting with you guys. Good to meet you, Moby. We'll see you back again, and give Ryan my best as well.
Yeah.
Okay, guys.
Thanks a lot. Yeah.
Take care. Take
Thanks
care.
so much, Larry.
Thanks.
Good.
Bye.
See you next week. Bye.